Eric, I don't think you've been on the show. Last time we met was at Caltech for your previous
Yeah,
book. The patient will see you now.
right.
That
Yeah, it
was
was a
great.
ways back for sure.
That was a ways back. Well, lots of happening there. But let me give you a proper introduction here. Dr. Eric Topol is the executive vice president and a professor of molecular medicine at Scripps Research, the largest nonprofit biomedical institute in the United States. He is also founder and director of the Scripps Research Translational Institute and a practicing cardiologist. He is one of the top 10 most cited researchers in medicine, known for his groundbreaking studies on AI in medicine, genomics, and digitized clinical trials. He was named to the Time 100 Health list of the most influential people in health in 2024, and he writes the Substack newsletter Ground Truths, which I've been reading. It's excellent. Ground Truths. And is the author of The Creative Destruction of Medicine, The Patient Will See You Now. And here's the new book, Super Agers. Love it.
All right.
And an evidence-based approach to longevity. Eric, guess what I did this morning?
What's that?
I played 4 sets of tennis with an 84-year-old, an 83-year-old, and an 82-year-old.
Fantastic.
And I said, you know what you guys are? You're super agers. And I showed them your book, and they're like, oh, okay. So
That's great.
I'm 70, and I was like the kid out there.
Well, you and I are the same age.
Yeah. I know, it's amazing. Age is really not an excuse anymore. I mean, when I was a kid, when we were kids, our parents were like ancient in their 40s, and then, they're probably going to be dead by their 60s, and nobody thinks like that anymore.
I think we got a reset going, and it's going to get accelerated with more super agers than ever before. Yeah.
Well, and then my other story, I have one of my cycling buddies up here, Ed, is 77. We rode his birthday in miles last year, 77 miles.
Nice.
And I have to say, at the last 10 miles or so, I was just dragging ass, and he's just pulling me all the way back. And it's like, oh my God, I can't use age as an excuse. Well, I'm old and slow now. No, Ed's up there and he's 77. So much for that.
Yeah, that's great.
So just kind of looking back, you've been in this business for a long time. How has medicine changed over the, say, last 50 years or so that you've been in the game?
Well, in many ways, it's still very slow to make major changes in terms of the patient care side. But, things have moved more and more into the digital front from what there's a total analog. There's been erosion of the patient-doctor relationship with a much less time given to patient encounters. So that's a negative thing. Um, and now I think with AI, we're seeing the potential rescue of that, getting the gift of time back if we really work on it. And then I think the biggest new frontier is using AI with all these layers of data on each person to prevent the major age-related diseases. That's what I'm really excited about right now, is that we're moving into a time in medicine that is unparalleled for the opportunity to actually fulfill the fantasy. It's been a fantasy, Michael, for millennia of preventing diseases rather than aiming to try to treat them better, or even the more difficult thing of even finding cures.
This would be like personalized medicine. Your cancer is unique to you. It's not like anyone else's cancer, even if it's prostate cancer, esophageal cancer, or whatever.
Yeah, an idea is that you know about that before the person even has the first cells of a cancer. And I think we have that capability now, because so much of cancer, as we've learned, is the immune system letting its guard down.
Mm.
And so if we have a person's immune system kept up, not allowed to go to senescence as we get older, the age-related cancers have a real great chance that we can prevent them.
Let's talk about what your book is not about. You're not promising people are going to live 1,000 years, or we're going to hit the singularity and you get to have escape velocity and live 13 months longer for every year that you live, and therefore you never die.
No, this is not Ray Kurzweil, the singularity is nearer, or the biohacking of people like, Brian Johnson,
Yeah.
right? Or any of these other, kind of quack predatory companies that are trying to promote longevity. No, this is about a different side of this, which is using the advances we made in science of aging, but using it to to prevent the diseases rather than trying to reverse aging. Because reversing aging is a bold, I hope it will click one of these days. There's lots of different ways we might be able to get there, but we're not even close on that score.
Yeah. That's my sense too. We deal with this at Skeptic because this is in that realm, I think, of pseudoscience and quackery, at least some of it. But I have to say, just, anecdotally, when I see these people like Ray and Aubrey de Grey and some of the other like calorie restriction guys, they don't look healthy to me. They look, I don't know, they look old and like just decrepit and weak. And it's like, I don't know, even that Brian Johnson guy, I watched that documentary on him, the Netflix doc on him.
Yeah.
And he's going to live, I don't know if he's going to live forever, but he's, centuries or whatever. And he does all these tests and stuff. He doesn't look healthy to me either.
No. You're a good call on that, Michael. Actually, those three people you mentioned, they look far from being healthy. But of course, as you know, it's not just from the outside. But at least what you would see, the optics don't look good.
Right. So really what you're talking about here is let's get people up into their 80s and 90s and maybe even the first decade of the hundreds without Alzheimer's and without, cardiovascular disease, or at least no heart attacks. In other words, relatively healthy and strong and feeling good. Like, I want to live life continuously because I feel good.
Yeah, so getting these three diseases, our arms are wrapped around them to prevent them, I think is eminently doable. Cardiovascular, we can do it, we're just not doing it, but also Alzheimer's and cancer. So if we do that, that's like 80% of preventing, diseases. Those are the big three. And I'm confident that we have a new approach now that can get us there. But of course, we have to go after it. We got to validate it, and it's not just going to happen by accident.
Yeah, that one of the funny lines I use on some of the Uber longevity people, the transhumanists, the cryonics, the mind uploaders, and the extropians. They're against entropy. Yeah, good luck with that. They said, "Don't you want to live 500 years, Shermer?" I'm like, just get me to 100 without Alzheimer's. Can you do that? No. It's like, well, then no, I don't want to live 500 years with Alzheimer's.
That you're making the essential point is that we're really after health span. Lifespan. If you're demented or you're so frail and have such a poor quality of life, that isn't worth much. So what I aspire is that we get to 85 plus. And without these three diseases. If we can do that, then we've got the real beginnings of a super age or era of humankind, which would be really exciting.
Totally. Why do people age? Just give us kind of the big picture here. Why do I have to get older?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things happening as we get older, unfortunately. I touch on the immune system, and that's one of the biggies because immunosenescence. That is, our immune system just does it's variable. So some people, like your tennis friends, they could probably, if they haven't had any major diseases, they may have a really intact immune system. But some at that age, it's down. It's really, minimal. And that's immunosenescence. The other thing is inflammaging. So our body tends to be much more promoting body-wide inflammation and brain inflammation. And that's not a good thing. The next is that as we have replication in our cells, we have errors that occur, and these mutations can lead to a clone, which can ultimately lead to a cancer. So just with age, we have more susceptibility to cancer. And without the immune system being totally intact, that gives cancer kind of a free rein in the body to grow and spread. And then in response to these misfolded proteins that get into our brain, like amyloid and tau, isn't so much the proteins, it's the brain inflammatory response that gets us in big trouble. And the same thing is the case with our arteries. As we get older, we tend to have more inflammation in our arteries, reaction to the cholesterol that's getting built up. That can start even in teenagers and people in their 20s. The common thing, though, Michael, is all three of these diseases take 20 years plus to actually get rooted in our body till symptoms actually become manifest. So we have a long runway to work with, and most people don't appreciate that. And certainly that gives us a big edge to get ahead of it.
Yeah. So, one thing I was getting at is, why doesn't my body operate like my 9-year-old? I have a 9-year-old son, and when he gets a cut, I can almost watch it healing. And when I get a
Yeah.
cut, it's weeks before it's healed up. And so it must be a bunch of different systems that are just in my body are just not operating as efficiently, or
Yeah, that's where you bring in the senescent cell story. So in the body, as we get older, we have senescent cells that can either secrete proteins that are very much inflammatory drivers, which is bad, but they also can promote healing, which is good. And so we don't tend to have as much of the healing power as we get older. And that's one of the issues. And that's why these senolytic drugs that try to eradicate our senescent cells from our body, that may not be good because some of that's our healing cells, not just our so-called secretory pro-inflammatory cells. But yeah, we don't have that kind of quick reaction like your 9-year-old as we get older. And, actually some people do throughout their all the way through their 90s. But most of us, we're gradually losing that. And what we've learned, which is really interesting, we now have these protein clocks, proteomic clocks. And now when you follow thousands of people at different ages, there's like, instead of aging being a linear story, you just keep eroding gradually. It's actually got 3 peaks of our aging. And so once you hit that 70 plus peak, that's when you get more prone to pro-inflammatory rather than the healing and anti-inflammatory that we would like to see, um, like what would be in a young person.
as a medical researcher, can you explain to us how you determine causality? So, for example, we know about confounders. So, coffee causes X, but maybe
Yeah.
coffee drinkers do something else that's actually causing the X, and it's just a proxy for that. And so you talk about this, a lot of these things about diets and exercise and all these different factors, but how do you know it's that and not something else?
Yeah, so there's lots of ways to either establish or intimate uh, causality. The first and kind of best way is a randomized trial where you basically keep everything the same in terms of the people that are going into it, and half of them get the intervention, like you're asking, like coffee or diet or whatever, and the other half get the standard or a placebo or whatever. We have such trials for diet. We have a number of trials like that for Mediterranean diet, which look very reinforce the benefit of a largely a plant-based food diet. Uh, so that's the best evidence. The second one that's great is natural experiments. And these natural experiments, they're perhaps even better than randomized trials because here, just by some type of odd happening, um, you can get large populations not selected by entry criteria into a randomized trial. And so, for example, there's been 3 of these recently with shingles vaccine.
Hmm.
And just because of your birth date or when they started the new vaccine and the old vaccine, whatever, 3 of them all come out with about a 20-25% reduction of dementia, mostly Alzheimer's, of course. That was a big revelation, and that's through a natural experiment, and that would really point towards causality. It doesn't tell you that you knock down the herpes virus that causes that it causes dementia, it causes shingles. But it does tell you that the vaccine, probably through revving up immunity in older people, is a benefit for these people. Now, the third way we do it, which is what you're getting at, is that you get this huge body of data, oftentimes many, many different studies, so-called observational studies, and you try to adjust for all the confounders. So, is the people that drank coffee, were they had a higher sociodemographic? Were they more educated? Did they were more physically active? Did they eat a better diet? And on and on and on. And so you try to adjust for all these things. You can never adjust for them perfectly. You do the best you can. What you want to do is look at lots of these studies to see if they all point in one direction. They could be due to that they all have the same confounders, right? That are
Hmm.
But most of the time when you see an effect and it's very consistent in magnitude and direction, that's fairly supportive. Maybe not of causality, but certainly of a strong association, a linkage. Now, the last thing, which is really popular, is to use Mendelian randomization. So you're not randomizing the intervention, but you're looking at a person's genes and you're randomizing by do they have this allele or not. That's a very powerful tool for causality if it's done properly. And we do have some evidence for some of these um, lifestyle things with Mendelian randomization. So those are pretty much the four ways you can get to it. Causality's hard. And oftentimes, we're between and betwixt as to, oh, this looks like a really strong association, but is it really this causes that? And that can be tricky.
Yeah, because you talk about socioeconomic status as a proxy or predictor of health outcomes, but there's nothing magical about that. There must be more physical direct causes, like you're living in a poor environment where there's not any good healthy supermarkets or restaurants, or the air quality is bad, or the air pollution, and so the water is contaminated with these microparticles, plastic particles, and all that stuff, and on and on and on. So you're using that as a broader predictor.
Yeah, your point is a really important one because these studies didn't adjust for things like air quality, microplastics, forever chemicals. So they make adjustments, but they're not comprehensive, and so that's why making too strong a conclusion based on association doesn't negate that concern about these confounders. Yeah.
And I always used as an example of natural experiments the blue zones. I always thought that was, I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
liked that. But now somebody's been telling me that maybe the reporting of the age of the people was not that accurate.
We might change the name to the myth zones
The myth zones.
because because there's nothing to substantiate the claims. When they went ahead and, went to these places to get the people's birth certificates, they found out that either they didn't exist or their ages were fabricated. So it looks like there's been a lot of funny business going on with these blue zones. And right now, I'd have to say we don't have any support that they exist. We do know that there are people that have remarkable agelessness, if you will,
Hmm.
age very healthy, but whether they're in certain parts of the world is still unclear because these magical places, we don't have data now. When it's been put to thorough interrogation, it comes up really very skeptical. Is your
Yeah.
term? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unfortunate because it was such a nice study.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's been Netflix specials and
Oh, I know.
all these books about it, and
Yeah.
it looked really good. But it was, I think, too good to be true.
Of course, they could be right for the wrong reasons. For example, if it turns out that, some people in the blue zone exercised more, had more friends, ate a healthy Mediterranean diet. Well, those are correct, but not for the reasons you think they are.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a key point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, talk about genetics. So, would twin studies be an example of teasing,
Yeah,
controlling for that?
yeah. Twin studies are really good. That's kind of like the Mendelian
Yeah.
randomization.
Yeah.
So when you have identical twins, that's a really good way to take a look at an intervention. Yes.
Yeah. And so, in that case, for example, as another, I don't know, teasing apart causality, you write about Alzheimer's, and that, many of the patients have the plaques and tangles upon autopsy, but there are some who had Alzheimer's who don't have the plaques and tangles. And then there are some people that have the plaques and tangles that never showed Alzheimer's. So obviously there's
Exactly.
other factors going on there.
Yes, and this is critical because we try to have the kind of reductionist, simplified approach all the time, and it's never that simple. No, our bodies are just not simple. So that's exactly right, as you point out. The issue about uniqueness, even identical twins are unique.
Mhm.
Their epigenomes are different. They were born somewhat slightly different times. And so when you do a genome sequence, you may see the same DNA, but there's other layers of their biology that are like their gut microbiome could be very different. So we can't even count on the identical twins as being identical. That's how different we are.
Yeah. Now, I've been working on a paper on the role of chance and how lives turn out. And Steve Pinker was pointing out to me that even identical twins, all the stuff you said, but like one's on top and the other one's on the bottom, or, just the neural connections between individual neurons, they're not going to be the same. It's just there's a lot of randomness at work there, most of which we don't know because scientists can't really deal with randomness very well.
Yes, and this is another point. I'm glad you mentioned it because, in the book, I present the first patient I present is this woman, Lee Rushall, and she is now 98, but her parents died in their 50s and 60s, as did her brothers.
Right.
And that's what we found in this elderly study of 1,400 people that were past 85 all the way up to 102 and had never been sick on no medications. They didn't have the classic story of that, oh, all my relatives lived to that ripe old age and they all were healthy as a horse, right? Which I never did understand that expression, healthy as a horse.
Yeah, right.
So, it's kind of like sleeps like a baby. I never had a baby that slept well. So anyway,
Yeah.
you got this problem here is that we tend to think that when you have you're 98 and you've never been sick, that is some great biological explanation. But it could be luck. It could just be a random, stochastic event. And so that's really kind of our burden. I do think, based on all the data, that if you had to put the big bet on it, it's the immune system that wouldn't show up in the genome sequence because you have to do perturbations. You got to really, interrogate the immune system. But the DNA sequence does not reveal why people have healthy aging. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And we know a few things, but they're tied more to longevity, like ApoE4 and a few other things. But by and large, we don't really have the underpinnings of health span. I think we're going to get those, but we sure didn't get them from the whole genome sequence.
I remember I did 23andMe back when I was writing for Scientific American so I could write about it. And so I checked the box for everything. I want to know everything. And so it came back. I didn't have the two genetic things for Alzheimer's. I thought, oh, great. So I'm not going to get Alzheimer's. They go, no, it doesn't mean that at all. You could very well get it. It just means you're slightly less likely. It's like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's actually bringing up the polygenic risk score,
Right.
which it kind of got its early start with 23andMe. But now through, 2 decades of work, we now have these nailed down multi-ancestry and with hundreds of variants for each of the common cancers, Alzheimer's, heart disease, atrial fibrillation. So we now have a pretty good predictive tool. The problem, beyond what you just mentioned, Michael, it isn't just that it tells you about some risk. It just says yes or no. It doesn't say when. So if you have a high risk for Alzheimer's, what if it's at age 102 versus 72, big difference. So the difference now is we have ways to get at the age. That's where the AI kicks in, the multimodal AI, and the ability to discriminate an arc of a person where they might likely show up within a year or two range of a disease of interest.
By the way, on this idea of lifespan and how people today live twice as long as people did a century or two ago, that's a little misleading, right? Because so many of the calculations like that are done with infant mortality. And if you take that out, I mean, if you make it to age 10, then you're probably going to make it to age 20. And if you make it to age 20, that increases your odds to make it to age 30 and so on. So, I mean, Charles Darwin lived to, I think, 80 something, and Alfred Russel Wallace lived to 91. So it's not like nobody lived a long time. But if you get through those hurdles, so your goal is to get more of us over those hurdles.
Right. Right, exactly. If you can get to 80 or, even 70, I would say, and you have no age-related major diseases, the big three we've been talking about, the chance of you getting to, another decade is much higher. especially, with the things that we know, like if you're practicing all the lifestyle factors that we know about and we've learned more about in recent times. Plus, we're going to have better drugs and ways to screen or put people under surveillance so they don't wind up getting these diseases. That's really the key. So you're absolutely right. We were misled because of the high infant mortality a century ago. So these ideas that we doubled the lifespan are really an incorrect notion. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. All right. My favorite chapter in your book, Lifestyle Plus. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Let's get into it. By the way, but just parenthetically, when I listen to RFKJ, and there's a lot that we are skeptical about with his
Mm.
anti-vaccine stuff, but a lot of stuff he says does kind of make sense. The toxins in the environment and the crappy diets and the obesity problem, those are true, right?
Yeah, here's my problem. RFK is uniquely positioned now to do some things that he could do to take on big food,
Yeah.
on the ultra processed food. He could take on the environment as he has during his career regarding air pollution, uh, the plastics, which is, such a mess, the forever chemicals. The problem is, while he may be interested in doing that, the administration otherwise is going in the opposite direction.
Mm.
It's basically making the EPA lose all of its oversight. And so, if anything, it's his potential good efforts will be overridden by basically a jungleoid approach to the environment and a denial of the climate crisis and things like that. So we have a real problem. It's like right hand doesn't know the left hand what they're doing, and it doesn't look promising that
Mm.
Kennedy will execute on the good parts of what he's been, I think, interested in, and why he has a big movement, like the Maha Moms. And,
Hmm.
there are a lot of people that support him for these things. And no one in the government has taken on big food. It took them
Right.
a long time even to take on big tobacco. But, are we going to ever see this getting accomplished? So I'm worried that he can't
Mm.
execute on the things, the good ideas, the good directions that he is interested in.
I didn't have time to fact check this statement of his about all the chemicals that European countries do not allow in foods that we do. Is that true?
Well, there's certainly some. A lot of these food dyes, they eliminated years ago, and we still haven't.
Hmm.
Um, you know, m- Maybe in California there was some legislation, but it hasn't really done much. So our tolerance for the food industry to basically do whatever they want has been very high. Other countries have been much more into dealing with the ultra processed food story. We have the highest consumption of that in the world. And we don't have, like our labels are totally insufficient for a consumer to know about these alien ingredients that you would never find in your kitchen. You don't even know what the hell they are. And some of them are some of those pro-inflammatory ingredients you could ever imagine. So we've done nothing in this country to get onto the ultra-processed foods, whereas other parts of the world, they've really been all over it.
So what would be an example of ultra processed foods that we should be avoiding?
Well, if you look at a package, whether a box or a package of like a snack food, you'll see these things in there that you'll never recognize. Some of these are for texture, like a xanthan gum and all
Mm.
kinds of things like that, so that it will get more rapidly into your gut and you'll get your reward circuit amplified. So you want to eat more and more of this stuff. And we know from some classic studies by Kevin Hall before he recently resigned from the NIH that people eating ultra processed foods eat much more food.
Mm.
So it basically is a reward circuit that keeps getting reinforced. So there's also these things that are preservatives. Like if you ever had anything, like say in your refrigerator, that lasted well longer than you expected, that's probably because it's got so much damn ultra processed
Mm.
crap in it, right?
Mm.
So first of all, the best thing is that you don't have to look at a list of ingredients. That's great, but obviously it's hard to avoid that. But when you do, it should be like 2 or 3 things. once you start seeing a long list, like a paragraph worth, you almost can guarantee that there's really bad stuff in there. And there's a classification. It's called Nova 4, which is ultra processed, and it lists all the things, all these foreign chemicals, which do not exist in anyone's kitchen.
Right.
And it does bring back, homemade food, homemade food. So the things that are often in cans and packages and boxes, you really want to be very careful about ingesting those and buying them in the first place.
So you recommend when you walk into a supermarket, stay on the perimeter.
You got it. No, that adage is really important. If you're just buying fresh produce, fresh things and not packaged, not boxed, you're going to be okay. You're going to avoid the, I call them UFOs, but it's really ultra processed.
Aliens.
But to me, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
this stuff should not be in our food. And the fact is, our children, which is one of the things RFK has pointed out, our children are even higher than 70% of their diet is from this stuff.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly fostering, that's too nice a word, inflammation.
Yeah.
So we see risk of type 2 diabetes, of later in life, Alzheimer's, cancer, you name it. Of course, cardiovascular disease prominently. So these are really bad substances. Remember the days, Michael, when trans fats were in all our foods?
Oh, yeah.
And it took decades before this country got on it. And remember, too, that Europe banned them before us by many, many years. And finally, not that long ago, trans fats were taken out of this country. Well, this is the same for the UPFs, but we haven't done it yet. And I don't know what we're waiting for, except the fact that the food industry doesn't really want to change. It's working. They get more food eaten.
So in that case, they have lobbyists that simply buy their freedom to do that.
There's one thing that's really interesting that I would not have predicted, and we don't know exactly why, but the GLP1 drugs, Ozempic and Mounjaro, not only do they have you eat less, but they have you eat healthier.
Yeah, I saw
Okay,
that.
you
Yeah,
eat
amazing.
less ultra-processed foods. It's like you were saying, how do we know? Well, if you take these drugs, you're going to wind up avoiding them. We don't know why. We don't know, of
It
course.
directs you into the perimeter of the supermarket when you walk in. I don't know why I'm going this way, but I am.
It's wild, really. So we know it helps, reduce addiction to not just alcohol, gambling even. It changes our reward circuits completely. It's really, really interesting.
Maybe it's going to, Ozempic will be the next statin. Like everybody should be on it.
It's interesting. There is something to that. If it clicks for Alzheimer's in the 2 big trials that are ongoing, that'll be a huge step towards that because before anyone loses weight, their inflammation in their body goes markedly reduced, and in the brain as well. So we'll see. The first trials will be out in Ozempic, which is a weaker drug than the others. But if that clicks by early next year, when those trials are due, that's going to be, the big one for expanding the benefits that we've seen in not just obesity, diabetes, kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, but that would take it to a whole other level.
I've seen some friends of mine take it and just the weight just sheds right off. And then I know some people that are not really obese at all. They just really like to lose that last 10 or 15 pounds so I can be extra lean. I'm like, maybe I should try that because I got that extra 10 or 15 right there.
Well, it works. The trials in Alzheimer's are in thin people, so that's what's really interesting.
Right.
Or, not overweight or not obese. But, it wouldn't be shocking. It's not just the drugs we have today, but this whole gut hormone story. The gut hormones talk to the brain and they talk to the immune system, and they are powerful. And so it might not just be the ones we have today and the triple receptor that we've already seen or the pills from these that we have today, but now we have like 10 or 12 gut hormones that are getting, mimics to add to the mix with combinations. And, when I was in medical school, the only gut hormone we knew was insulin. Now we have
Right.
a long list, and we're just starting to see the benefits. So I think people don't realize that what we're seeing in recent years, this eureka effect with gut hormones, is just the beginning of a whole nother class of drugs um, that mimic our natural hormones that were only discovered, in recent times.
Do we know what the causal link is between these ultra processed foods and inflammation?
Well, we know that they do incite inflammation,
Hmm.
but there's debate about what is the kind of molecular mechanism. And of course, as you pointed out, they vary a lot in terms of their structure, the chemical structure.
Hmm.
So they may not all be working through one
Hmm.
common pathway. But yeah, you see a lot of inflammation, like whenever you see experiments, it's like the plastic story,
Hmm.
which is amazing. The
Unbelievable. Yeah.
classic story in the plastics is that you get there was a study done in Italy, multiple centers, and they looked at people having a carotid endarterectomy because of atherosclerosis in that artery in the neck that feeds the brain. So 60% of people, when they examine the artery, the sick atherosclerotic artery, 60% had microplastics in the artery. And right around the plastics, you see this vicious inflammation response.
Hmm.
Vicious. But more importantly, you follow the people, the 60% who had the plastics and the inflammation versus the 40% of hundreds of people who didn't have plastics in their artery. And guess what? The people with the plastics had 4 to 5-fold increase in heart attacks, strokes, and deaths.
Hmm.
So that tells us these plastics are not just, innocent bystanders. They induce inflammation, just like the ultra-processed foods, and they can, hurt a person from the standpoint of heart attacks and strokes. And they've been found in the brain, just like in fact, they have more affinity in the brain than the heart.
So it's the body's way of attacking a foreign object, much like when I was a kid, I used to get splinters, and then around the splinter you could see, it was red and hot, and so it's something like that. But what would that be in the brain? I mean, when you say the brain has inflammation, it's the whole brain is swelling, or just pockets, or
Yeah, so some of these ultra-processed foods can get right through their blood-brain barrier. These are chemicals of very low molecular weight, and
Mm.
we don't really have a way to so they can get in the brain and directly incite inflammation. The other thing, of course, is they can get while they're eating and ingesting, they can get the gut hormones activated that tell the brain, go into inflammation mode, if you will, to simplify things. So, no, there's lots of ways that these drugs can hurt us. These ultra-processed foods can hurt us. Um, and it's a real problem. The plastic story, is a big study that showed we're accumulating more and more in recent times of microplastics up to like a spoon's worth in our brain. And it's go back to that, associated with much higher rates of Alzheimer's and dementia. It doesn't, again, it's not good to have foreign things, whether it's these chemicals in food or plastics or forever chemicals in our body, because they tend to be pro-inflammatory. If there's one theme here, is we don't want untoward inflammation. That gets
right.
us, it reduces that health span, healthy aging story quite a bit.
And isn't there something about how much food you eat and how often you eat that just the whole metabolism ramping up to process food, which causes, I don't know, not inflammation maybe, but something like the body to overwork. So the low calorie or starvation periods of time allows the body to run cooler, something like that.
Yeah, so the intermittent fasting
Yeah.
is there's lots of schedules, the 4
Yeah.
to 3, 5 to 2, I mean, you name it. The point being is that there's been a lot of studies of that. The data are somewhat mixed, as does it reduce your biological epigenetic age, but it does help lose weight. And to your point, I think is a good one. If you can eat your dinner on the early side and you go all the way to the next morning, you don't eat anything in between, that's probably a very healthy thing for a human, because that doesn't put your body, kind of metabolically being challenged, gives it a good, time out. we still don't have all the data to ice that. It's more speculative. But then we don't know, for example, whether fasting extensively or these intermittent fasting schedules, do they really work? Do they really slow the aging process? It's still up in the air. And there are some, like the scientists at USC, that are strong proponents, but some of these studies just don't have the proof that we need.
Yeah. All right, put you on the spot here. We're recording this we're at noon. What did you have for breakfast this morning? What are you going to have for lunch and dinner?
Okay. Yeah, so I had yogurt, plain yogurt, nothing else, no additives. I had some strawberries and blueberries in it, and I threw in a little bit of granola. That's kind of a healthy granola. So that was my breakfast.
But hang on, because I love granola, but a lot of them have a lot of sugar.
Right. I purposely get a granola from a local grocery that doesn't. So it has there's no added sugar. It's just grains, some nuts stuff in there, some like raisins or cranberries, but not any sugar added. But you're right. Like these Kind bars, they're not kind. Okay.
Yes, right.
There's a lot of crap in these things. You got to really be careful what you're eating there. So I don't eat basically anything till dinner, and my dinner will be almost invariably, it's a salad with an oil and vinegar dressing. I'll put in, typically lots of different types of lettuce and tomatoes, carrots, lots of carrots, and salmon if I can. Sometimes it would be just some tuna from a can with water. But usually, add some protein to a salad, and that will be my dinner. That's what I had last night. That's probably what I'm going to have tonight. So yeah, I try to follow a healthy diet, and I don't usually eat after dinner till the next morning. I always have thought, if you don't wake up hungry, that's not something wrong. You should be waking up hungry. That's why they call breakfast, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of me. Sometimes in the middle of the day, I'll have some nuts or something, a small snack. But a lot of times I don't even do that.
That was one of the wilder stories in that Netflix doc about Brian Johnson, where he had his dinner at, I don't know, it was like 11:30 in the morning. That was his last meal for the day.
Oh, yeah.
And then they asked about, and then he goes to bed by 8:15. So they asked about his love life. He's a single guy. He goes, well, it's not so good. Gee, that's a shocker.
Oh, it's crazy because he has the exact number of calories,
right?
Like 2,350, whatever it is. And then he has a penile sensor compared to his son.
Right.
How many erections each night? I mean, these are crazy things, It's just, yeah.
Dude, get a girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but so that sounds like a great diet for sure. What about oatmeal?
I don't eat oatmeal. So oatmeal, people think that's such a healthy thing.
Yeah, sounds healthy.
But it's basically carbohydrate. And if you wear a glucose sensor, I tried that, for a couple of weeks, a couple of times. It shot up my glucose, I said, well, I don't want that. I want to, relatively flat. I'll take a small, like from 90 to 120, 130, but I don't like something going to the 170. And so I eliminated I used to have oatmeal and like it, but then I started realizing, for me at least, it wasn't helping my glucose regulation. It was a challenge to me. I said, why should I keep going through that if it's a challenge? Yeah.
How about all the different peanut butters, almond butter, cashew butter, mixed nut butter, all those? Those are yummy.
Yeah, I haven't tried those, Michael.
Okay. I buy them at the Bristol Farms here, and I just take a spoon. When I'm hungry, as a snack in between, meals if I'm hungry.
Well, they have a high amount of protein. They probably would be fine as long as there's not anything else added to it,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, peanut butter is good stuff as long as it's not all the junk that's added.
The cheaper
peanuts.
stuff has sugar in it.
Yeah, like Jif and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. So maybe that, back to the SES factor, maybe because they say that some of those poor communities are food deserts. They don't have a Bristol Farms or a Whole Foods anywhere within driving distance. So that's right. And the local supermarket doesn't have the the special peanut butter, almond butter stuff. They just got the Jiffy with the
Yeah,
sugar.
exactly. Peter Pan or Jiffy or some of the so there are some good ones that just have the nuts and maybe a
Yeah.
little salt or whatever, but yeah, you're right. And we do have a big problem with food deserts. And in those deserts, we also have the highest intake of ultra-processed foods
Yeah.
and, all kinds. It's really a problem.
When my wife moved here from Germany 11 years ago now, wow. She was shocked by the bread because in Germany,
Mhm.
the bread is great. I mean, it's, a
Yeah,
big loaf
yeah,
of
yeah.
bread is like 8 pounds, right? Our bread is just crappy. There's nothing in it. It's fluffy and sugary. She's like, what is this?
Yeah. No, it's a big difference. The Europeans, they have a lot of edge on us on a lot of the things that they eat. But their bread, of course, is usually much higher quality. You can find, it's interesting you mentioned that, Michael, because there's just down the street from where we live, there's this bakery that does like European style bread. And like on the weekends, there's lines, like
Hmm.
a quarter mile long
Wow.
to get their bread because they can't get it anywhere else.
Right. Right.
So it's good bread. I mean, really good bread is hard to come by. But yeah, I mean, and as long as you're not having an overdose on it, it's certainly, there's these people that say no carbohydrates. Well, that's a little off because, there's nothing wrong with having, small quantities of healthy bread.
Yeah. I've had John Mackey on the show a couple times, and he's a longtime good friend, founder of Whole Foods and so on. But he's the real deal. He really lives that life. He's a vegan, but he's also a capitalist. And we should be able to have people eat healthy, and companies can make money the American way. Why can't we do that model everywhere? So there's no
Uh,
more
uh,
food deserts.
I'm with you. We need to. I mean, that's actually one of the things that's going to hold us back from this master plan of how we can eradicate or markedly reduce the toll of the big three age-related diseases are all the health inequities and, like you're mentioning, the food deserts and all the things and the environmental burden of
Yeah.
toxicity. If we don't pay attention to that, we're not going to get where we need to be.
Yeah. Okay, quickie on the diet stuff. Chicken and red meat. What do we know?
Yeah. Well, chicken's okay, that's not a problem. Red meat is pro-inflammatory,
Mm,
so it's okay, but you wouldn't wanna have it on a frequent basis.
mm,
Uh, so, in the book, I review all the data about that pro-inflammatory side of red meat, and so that's just something to keep in mind. I
yeah.
mean, I don't say, "Oh, you shouldn't eat it." I haven't had any red meat in over 4 decades,
Wow.
but a lot of my patients will say, "What about that?" I say, "It's okay, but I wouldn't, have this more than once, twice a week, because then
Yeah.
you're just subjecting yourself to some inflammation
You're
that's
a
unnecessary."
you're a pescatarian.
Yeah, I'm a pescatarian. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Weight. BMI, is that a viable measure anymore? Or
No,
no. Yeah.
terrible,
Okay. Yeah. I
terrible.
thought so. Right.
It sucks. I mean, you really wanna have, ideally, a waist to hip ratio, um,
Yeah. Of some kind.
but yeah, but you have to know how to measure that properly. But, the BMI is so obsolete
Yeah.
and still is used. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
We have to get over that. Someday, perhaps we will.
Yeah. Okay. Sleep. 7
Yeah.
hours.
There's a lot of big things that we've learned about sleep. First of all, I was very surprised when I reviewed all the data in the book that 7 hours was the optimal duration of total sleep. I always thought it was 8 or more.
Right.
And in fact, what you'd see in all the curves is that you start getting beyond 7 and 8, you start to see detrimental links. Again, associations, not causality.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up early. Now, what we've learned more than that, much more than that, is about how we clear the waste metabolic products from our brain each night.
Hmm.
And that's through this channels of glymphatics as opposed to lymphatics. Glymphatics. And we learned they basically are getting rid of these waste products every night during our deep sleep. That's the slow wave sleep that's typically early in the night, not necessarily, but usually early. And we want to get as much of that as possible to get all that crap out of our brain, right? Now, turns out as we get older, our deep sleep keeps getting lower
Hmm.
and lower. And so when I started tracking my deep sleep, I was aghast because it was down to averaging less than 15 minutes. And I said, this is horrible. I knew I didn't sleep well, but
Mm.
I didn't know it was that bad. So I started really working on that, and, everything every interaction, like, when did I eat last, and when did I exercise last, and what did I eat, and, very importantly, limiting my fluid intake in the evening and maximizing it in the morning and early in
Mm.
the day, and just really going really, wild with fluids, water early, because that interrupted sleep during the night.
You mean if you got to pee
That's
in the
not
middle of
good.
the night, you're up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not good,
Yeah.
not good, because then you
Right.
gotta start all over again with getting back to sleep.
Right.
So, I've been able to get it up to average more like 45 minutes. I'm still working on it. I wanna get it up to an hour. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I've had a couple of nights like that. Um, if we When you're 70, if you can get, now women do better than men for sleep, but for a man to get 60 minutes of deep sleep, that's really good. And we have to do this because if you wanna prevent Alzheimer's, the other thing I learned, which is big, was the regularity. I was erratic. My wife is a big time night owl. So sometimes I'd stay up late with her. Now I said, no, no, I'm going to bed early. Not like Brian Johnson, but early for me, more like 10ish.
Mm.
The reason being is that sleep regularity is a big deal.
Yeah.
It ties into deep sleep, but it also ties into cardiovascular, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. So these are the adjustments I made, and I just basically followed where the research has taken us. And it's impressive that we can be much healthier for sleep. And I think we should all be striving for that because most people are not getting really good sleep or deep sleep
I just wo-
as we age.
I just get up whenever I wake up. I don't set
Yeah,
alarms or anything unless I have an early flight or something. But how do I know how
that's
much
good.
deep sleep I'm getting? You have to have one of those wearables like the Oura Ring or a smartwatch or
An Aura ring, or there's several other rings now. There's smartwatches do it, and mattresses. A lot of mattresses now have a
Mm.
sensor in them, or that you can get an app that you can have tied to your mattress. So there's three ways to get at it. Um, the ring seems to be a bit more accurate than the smartwatch. I use both. I compare them, and I interestingly, sometimes they're very concordant and sometimes they're very discrepant. But I think the ring is one that is most helpful for accuracy,
Mm.
and I think it's something if you don't think you're sleeping well and you have concerns about that, it might. We don't have a. This is something I emphasize in the book. We can't prove that using sleep trackers changes outcomes. We only can infer that if you are regularly getting, much better sleep pattern, deep sleep regularity, that is more likely to be associated, not cause and effect, but more likely
Mm.
with favorable major health outcomes.
Yeah, I got to get some of those because I I think I sleep well, but I have no idea how much deep sleep time I have. So what you're telling me is that when I wake up at 2 a.m. and flip open my computer and watch a documentary on Hitler in color, that's probably not the best thing I should do.
Not a good idea. Oh, and by the way, everyone should rule out that they don't have sleep apnea,
Mm.
because a lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
Because their partner may be, sound asleep and they're stopping breathing,
Mm.
so ruling that out, you don't have to be obese to have sleep apnea.
Mm.
So that's another good thing to know about from tracking. And now you can get that too from rings and from smartwatches.
Nice.
Any rate, yeah, if you're getting up on a frequent basis during the night, that's probably a reason to track it. You don't have to do it long term, but just get a grip on it for a few weeks to see what the pattern is like.
Good idea. All right. I loved your chapter section on exercise, of course, because I'm an exercise nut, mostly cardio, but now a lot of my cycling buddies are doing weights because a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
older cyclists have weak, brittle bones because we don't do enough gravitational pull or stress or whatever.
Yeah, I'm really into that too now. I used to only say aerobic, and then my patients would come in and they come in all, muscular cut, and I'd say, "Well, you're lifting too much weights. What about, a
Yeah.
bicycle or a treadmill or, long walks, brisk walks, whatever, swimming." Any rate, I've shifted to integrate balance, better posture. These are things that are really important. So our balance, as you know, is so critical, and you can train to have much better balance just by standing on one foot on a foam pad and other ways to get your core. So it isn't just weightlifting. Getting your core strength is so critical, and it interplay with balance. And then finally, you want to have beach muscles. That's great, but getting your upper body, which most of our exercises do nothing, aerobic for our upper body, and then that's where you have to really do some weight strength training. So I think it's really important. The data are pretty striking. That's what convinced me. I've been well over a year into it, and I've never been stronger and have better balance in my life, I think, just by training. And everyone can do that. And it's very inexpensive, if not, some bands and, standing on standing on one foot doesn't cost anything. But if you can do that for a minute or two, you're on the right track. And you can tell if your core is weak by going, sitting in a chair to standing. Try to do that 20 times quickly. And if you can't do that, that means your core needs some work. Yeah.
So what this translates to use an example, I remember talking to my friend Jared Diamond when he turned 80. He said, the riskiest thing I'll do today is take a shower. And he had data about, people in their 80s, if they fall, that's where the meltdown starts. They break a hip or something like that. And so your point is that all of us slip or whatever. If my core is good, my grip is solid, and my balance is pretty good, if I slip like anybody slips, I'm more likely to grab something or catch myself or readjust and not actually hit the ground.
Exactly. If you get through the big three, cancer, neurodegenerative, and cardiovascular, but then you fall and have a hip fracture and die from that, that's not good. So it turns out, though, interestingly, these three age-related diseases, these big ones, do really well with better balance, strength training. The whole idea of exercise, interestingly, even though during the exercise there's a bit of inflammation that is from that, overall, it markedly improves your immune system function, and you're much less to be pro-inflammatory in general. So, and it isn't just aerobic. I mean, these other forms of exercise and training do that as well.
What's the thinking about grip strength? Why do I care about that? And related to that is hang time. What difference does it make how long I can hang on a chin-up bar?
It's a really good point, because that's a great metric that's been used, and it's an indicator of healthy aging. It's a marker of it. Turns out it's probably a proxy for your upper body strength. I mean, you're not going to have some really great hand grip strength, and then your upper body is going to be weak, so it's probably that. But, I think it's good to have good hand grip strength, but, it's probably something easy to measure, which coincides with what have you been doing with your arms and your upper body? Because as soon as I, got going on my upper body strength, my hand grip strength shot up, too. And I didn't do, hand grip things. So I think they're very, very much correlated.
Yeah. Well, then also body weight, because if you weigh a lot, it's going to be harder to hang.
You got it. Yeah. No, hanging is a good type of exercise, on a chin-up thing.
Yeah.
Really good form of exercise.
I did it, I don't know, about a year ago when Peter Attia had Lance Armstrong on his podcast, or it might have been vice versa. Everybody has a podcast now. And they were doing hang time comparisons. I think Lance said he made it a minute. So then I tried to see if I could do a minute. I did it. I made it a minute.
That's great. Really.
So it's harder than you think, though. I think, I can sit there for 5 minutes. No.
Oh, no. That would be very difficult. A minute's good. Yeah. But you want to do repeats.
Oh, right. I didn't try the repeats. Okay. I was really disturbed by the section in your book on the water bottles that I have here in the office that I use constantly.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that these plastic water bottles, there's this like molecules are dissolving away into the water? And why is this legal? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's a double hit, because the water we drink now already has microplastics in it. And now stored in plastic, it's just absorbing some of those micro nanoplastics right into the water. So we should get rid of plastic water bottles. They're a really big toll of our plastic burden that's accumulating, megatons. It's
Mm-hmm.
non-degradable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of great ingenious ways to degrade plastics so it doesn't get into our oceans and lakes and air. We're not doing it. Um, so there's a limit to how much we can do on an individual basis. I mean, for example, you don't want to take your food that's sitting in a plastic container and put it in a microwave.
Mm.
That's taking your plastic ingestion to the fourth hour or
Oh my
something,
God. Okay.
And you
Oh, so
ideally,
yeah, you mentioned popcorn bags. Oh, right, because
ooh,
that's in the
yeah,
microwave.
ooh, yeah. So, if you have water, um, I mean, you're better off, like, I'm sure you've seen it when you've flown. Sometimes they have water in cartons now.
Yes.
And
Right.
that's better, yeah, and why doesn't all the water, be put in, cartons without a layer inside that has plastic? So, we can do better, but it means making this a national initiative, and there's been no sign of that. That goes back to that RFK thing that if he was, bold, he would take this on, but I suspect that's not gonna happen. I hope it will, but, no signs of it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Cardiovascular disease and statins.
Yeah.
I'm on a statin. My doc is like, I don't know if you really need it, Shermer, given how much you exercise and your diet and so on. But my family history. My dad died at 61 of a heart attack. His dad died at 60 something as a heart attack, and one of his two brothers died of a heart attack. So I tell this to the doc. They're like, all right, we're putting you on a statin. I don't know what to think.
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways to get at this. One way is your LDL cholesterol,
Yeah.
but that's only one way. Another way is to do a polygenic risk score for coronary disease, which is actually quite good. It's been validated to the hilt. Of all the polygenic risks that you can get for, very low cost from one of these 10 different companies, that one is the most accurate. That'll tell you yes, no, and it may liberate you from your parental lineage, your father and
Mm-hmm.
grandfather. It may tell you that you're a low risk, which there's the risk polygenic of all the hundreds of gene variants that cumulatively tell you, do you have a risk weighted? Do you have a risk or not? That is very good to tell about statin responsiveness,
Mm.
right? Um, some have advocated getting a calcium scan,
I did that.
CT scan.
Yeah.
And if it's 0, then, you're not gonna get a lot of bang from a statin. I don't recommend those. I go CAC, see calcium, CT, because,
Yeah.
it gets people they go cuckoo, some of them, and they have a high calcium, and it may not even be in their arteries. There is some proportionality of the high calcium score with risk of coronary disease and response to statins. But I try to avoid that because I think the polygenic risk score, which you can get from saliva, is cheaper, is a better one test.
Mm.
Then the other thing is you can look at your other proteins like your ApoB, your HDL, your lipoprotein little a,
Mm.
LPA,
Mm-hmm.
and just get a kind of a context. Are you at risk for coronary disease? You can also look at inflammation in your body, like a high sensitivity CRP or cytostatin and other better inflammatory markers that will have. Basically, not knowing if you have a high LDL cholesterol. I think if you've never had heart disease and your LDL is low, your ApoB is low, it's hard to make a really good case for you to take a statin
Yeah.
just because of a family history.
Well, my LDL is a little high. The HDL is in the right range. I don't know. The average is a little high. I did the cardio score. It was 103, which is, but it's way lower than my
It's,
buddy who has half the body weight and he's twice as fast as I am on a bike.
yeah, was that 103 recent?
About a year ago.
Oh, that's great then. No,
Yeah.
I mean, you're at very low risk then.
Okay.
I mean, a
Okay. Good.
103 at age 69, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but on the causal connection of taking a statin, I mean, there's several links in there, right? Of between having high cholesterol and taking a statin to lower that, particularly the LDL, and then downstream a cardiac event.
Yes. So there is no question that if you are very high LDL cholesterol that, we're talking way over, 150 plus,
Mm.
your risk of coronary disease and other atherosclerosis in the body is really high.
Mm.
And so those people are going to either benefit from a statin or the combination with ezetimibe that prevents cholesterol absorption from what you eat. It doesn't get into the bloodstream. It's a well-tolerated medicine. There's also now these monoclonal antibodies against the PCSK9 gene that are
Mm.
really potent. You can add to the mix. So if somebody's really high risk, you can get their LDL down very low. You can get it down to, less than 30, 20, it's now possible. And we're getting new drugs to lower LPA,
Mm.
these CETP drugs. So our armamentarium to take over the lipid story and inflammation is really expanding. And that's why cardiovascular is so ripe to prevent, because it's so responsive to diet, exercise, sleep, and blood pressure control, prevention of diabetes, prevention of obesity. So if you add on this anti-inflammatory story with the LDL and
Mm-hmm.
related, you can get the chance of developing heart disease way, way down. And
Mm-hmm.
we're just looking at that right now, and we're not doing enough about that.
Yeah.
And it isn't just a statin story, because a lot of people can't tolerate statins. And I have many patients that they have such terrible night cramps and muscle spasms. And
Right.
what's interesting is the data from the trialists keep saying, "Oh, everybody could take a statin. It's in their head." Well, it's not in their head.
No.
A lot of people. And one other thing about statins that's really important that I underscored in the book. Over a decade ago, I wrote a New York Times op-ed about if you take intensive statins, you have a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
Mm.
Now, I got blasted by my cardiology colleague. It's true, though. And all the studies that have come out since then keep reinforcing that if you take a really high dose of atorvastatin, that used to be Lipitor, or Crestor, your chance of migrating into type 2 diabetes
Mm.
is increased. So your doctor may not care, but you should be checking your glucose
Oh no,
at times.
my current doctor doesn't think I really need it. He thinks I'm overthinking it. I don't know.
Yeah.
40 milligrams. I'm taking 40 milligrams. I don't get the cramping, I think, because I don't ride as long as I used to. But what would be a high dose then for that?
So 40 milligrams of Lipitor,
no, it's
atorvastatin?
lovastatin.
Oh, okay. That's a mild one. So
Okay.
that dose is not a work. The only time we saw the diabetes was in the high doses of atorvastatin
Okay.
and rosuvastatin, which is Crestor.
Okay, I see.
You're on a very mild statin, so
Okay.
you don't need
All
to
right.
worry about that one.
Okay, I'm going to quit worrying about it. I'm just going to go have fun.
Good idea. That's important. That's important.
Yes. Well, so let's talk about that. Having, what do we know about, having a social life, being married, or having a loving relationship, friends, just all that stuff seems to matter.
It's actually a much bigger deal than I expected. When you review all the data, and I go over that, I think it's in the mental health chapter predominantly, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very powerful to have social interactions. And, we need that. We're a social animal. And if we get older, there's a graph in the book that a lot of people get struck by, which is how we become recluses as we age. And that's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
As we age, we shouldn't live in a cave.
Mm-hmm.
We should be doing whatever we can to have more interactions with other people, friends, family, our network. And if we don't have it, it's grooming it is important. So this is something that a lot of people would say is social science, but the data are very strong. And it again, is tried to do all the things to rule out the confounding factors like we've been talking about.
Yeah. And do we know that it's more than just having friends and family and people who love you to remind you to go to the doctor and take your vitamins and don't forget to work out and don't eat the cheesecake?
Yeah, no, I think it's more about that you get a benefit from not being isolated.
Mm.
The isolating is promoting anxiety, even if you're not aware of it, depression.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not good for your mental health. And we know there's this very intricate interdependence of mental and physical health. So I think this is, really the way we understand social interactions is even if you're having an argument with someone else, you're better off to be with that person than you are to live in a cave.
Mm.
And there's so many things that happen as we age, the loneliness, social isolation that are undesirable.
Yeah. Okay, neurodegeneration, besides doing all the things you've already said to help attenuate that, any use of doing Sudoku puzzles and playing online chess and crossword puzzles and all that kind of stuff? Do we have any evidence that those make a difference?
Unfortunately not. It can't hurt. But we don't have good evidence that it promotes brain health. We're going to have that. We're going to test that because now we have these brain clocks to tell you your brain age. So that these organ clocks are just extraordinary, whereby it's a discovery that Tony Whisk-Corey and his colleagues at Stanford made. It was on the cover of Nature a couple of years ago. And what happened was now many groups have replicated this. What you see is that when you take up to 11,000 proteins from your blood, you can partition them with AI to an immune clock, a brain clock, heart clock, liver, gut, all these different clocks of your body, kidney clock. And so then you can tell if that clock if that organ or organ system in your body is aging faster than you are, or the other organs or system. So we're going to know, we haven't had a test like this, whether Sudoku or, crosswords helps to promote brain health. We just haven't had a way to do that. Maybe we'll see it. Now, what is important is we have much better markers available today. There's a p-tau 217 that I write about in the book, which of course there's other of these neural markers. We can get that now. It's been around for 2 years in the U.S. And it has to be ordered by a physician. And if I wouldn't just say willy-nilly, people should go out and get it. But the reason why it's important is if you're at high risk, let's say you have Alzheimer's in your family, you have an ApoE4 allele, which about 20% of us or more have. You're now at a higher risk zone for Alzheimer's, especially, you're 50-ish, let's say, or older. Or if you want, you can even start earlier. You get a p-tau 217. And what's been shown in multiple studies is exercise and improved lifestyle brings that down. So this is not only a great marker for telling you 20 years in advance of risk for Alzheimer's. It's so sensitive. It's the earliest pickup of detection of risk. It's as good as a PET scan for tau. It's as good as cerebrospinal fluid from a lumbar puncture without having a needle put in your back. So it's a great blood test, and I only recommend it in people who are at high risk for the reasons I mentioned. And it's a motivating factor like LDL cholesterol, like you take a statin to bring it down. Well, this is for people to want to improve their lifestyle factors to bring it down as well. And that should help prevent Alzheimer's.
One of my favorite parts of your book is the 93-year-old guy who took up rowing.
Yeah.
He was not a lifelong athlete, just decided to take it up, and it still works. So you can do this anytime.
This is amazing. I was so inspired by him, as I am by all these people that are in the welderly group, as compared to our elderly, which is the vast majority of people as they get older. But this fellow, become a world champion rower just by doing a workout in his garage every day. I mean, it's incredible. So it's never too late to be fit. Never too late.
I love that. All right, Eric, I know you have other interviews to get to. Your book just came out, and it's being well reviewed, I see. So congratulations on that. Just looking forward to the future. Here, I'll think back at 10 years ago when Christopher Hitchens died of esophageal cancer, and Francis Collins, of all people, said, let's see if we can get the genome sequence of your particular cancer and see if we could. Well, that didn't work out for Hitch, but that's the kind of future we're looking for, right? That my cancer is different from yours where I started, and that my body's different from anybody else's body, and we can personalize our medicine.
Absolutely. But what we have now is a unique opportunity, Michael, where everything's been reactive to try to come up with effective treatments for cancer. We have to, if we're going to talk about moonshots or big audacious goals. We got to prevent cancer.
Yeah.
Once we already have, on a scan, like an MRI, billions of cells, and it's cancer, we're pretty far along. We have to get, now that we can pick up microscopic cancer, we can pick up people high risk for cancer. So I'm excited about the prevention side. We're not doing anything about it. We have people going through screening, women with mammograms. 88% of women will never get breast cancer ever in their life.
Right.
But all of them getting a mammogram. Talk about waste.
Yeah.
So we're not doing anything smart about this, and we can. And so I hope that in the short times ahead, that we'll start to partition risk and prevent these big three diseases. We have an opportunity that is unmatched because of the combination of AI and all the things that we've been learning, layers of data in recent years. So it's exciting.
Yeah, another example I use in one of my lectures on Bayesian reasoning and signal detection theory is no test is perfect, and you're going to get a certain percentage of false positives. So if you're testing, hundreds of millions of women for breast cancer, whatever the percentage, however small the percentage is, that's a lot of patients that are going to be told they have breast cancer and they don't.
Over 10 years, women starting at age 50, over 10 years, 60% along the way will have a false positive. That's incredible high number.
Wow.
I mean, it's just crazy. That's a study of 10,000 women.
Wow.
So we have to do we are smarter than this. We know the ways to fractionate partition risk. We just got to start doing it. And it isn't just by age.
Yeah, right. All right, here it is again. Super agers. You want to be a super ager? I want to be I am a super ager.
Well, only when you get to 85. You're not 85 yet.
Oh, okay. I'm still a whippersnapper.
we're both in the quest, but we want to stay
to be a super ager. Okay.
We want to go 15 more years plus.
I would
and
hope
not
so.
have neurodegenerative cancer or cardiovascular. If we do that, then we've got to that super ager status.
Well, again, it's an evidence-based approach to longevity. We're not looking for utopia. You're not going to live 1,000 years, so don't worry about any of that stuff. Just get me to 100.
I'll take 85.
Yeah, 85 will be. Yeah, I'll aim for that and keep going as long as I can.
Yeah, as you said, the more you get to 85, the more you'll eke out some other good years.
That's right. All right, Eric. Thanks so much for your work and for your new book. Congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. Really was fun. Yeah, thank you.